Well, slap me silly and call me Don Johnson. It's Chad Chop, and it's Coach Ballgame. And the Rangers are World Series champs. My brother, you called it. The Boch is the man. How you doing on episode 74 of the Talkin' Shop podcast?
Man, I'm doing good. Yeah, I feel good about the result. Deb was asking me about it, and I think before Game 5, my dad asked me. I was like, "Well, I think I said it on the pod. I think I had Rangers in 5. I don't know if I said it on the pod, but I know I said it to multiple friends of like Rangers. They beat Houston in Houston. But man, they're something else. They got
There was a
hot.
specific magic around that club, and it just felt right. And the Diamondbacks had a lot of magic too. They had some juju. They beat some juggernauts, but give it to the Rangers, give it to Boch, and I really do think that this movement of wise older statesmen coming into the manager seat, it's a thing, man. And maybe you can unpack that better than me. Why are all these managers that are 60, 70 years old, well, why are they winning World Series championships? 3 in a row now, the three oldest managers.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect blend of analytics and heartbeat, right? So you've got guys that have seen everything there is to see, and they don't just default to the kind of the script, right? They can kind of see where they need to zig, where the script says to zag, and they do it, and it's worked 3 years in a row now. So oftentimes managers, they make decisions based on educated decisions, right? Like they've got things for a reason. They've got runways for pitchers for a reason. um, and they want to be able to explain why they did it, right? So if it doesn't work, you have a reason for why you did it, and that's great. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. There's not. But there's something to be said for these guys that have got this hunch, and they play the hunch, and they don't mind having to explain that, yeah, I played a hunch. And in the playoffs, a lot of times that works because it's such a small sample size. It won't work over the course of a whole season. Analytics clearly work in the marathon, but in the sprint, you've got to be able to understand that, there's a heartbeat to the game. And I think that's what Boch did extremely well. And obviously Dusty Baker before him, and Mr. Snideker before Mr. Baker.
I think the players respond to that too when they know their manager, who's building the lineup, knows their heartbeat and watches the game. It's not just scripted out. They're smelling the smells and feeling the feels. The players respond to that big time. I think they want some humanity in the game. That's what we're trying to bring to these youth coaches from this podcast is be humans and treat the kids like humans first. In a world where parents are going crazy about playing time and making sure their kid doesn't strike out every at bat, clinging onto that fence. Yikes! We as youth coaches, we got to read the room, and we got to make sure that the level heads prevail and build this culture that it doesn't have to be crazy. Youth sports doesn't have to be crazy. We don't need presidents of soccer leagues in 9U emailing families around the town. Hey, stop being mean to the referees. Stop calling people names. Like, what is this? This is mental illness. This is not being educated. This is anxiety. This is basically treating your therapy session on a youth sports forum. Not okay. I don't like when I see these emails come through, but hey, we will respond by doing something about it, by talking coaching. Try to make youth coaching better each and every episode. Episode 74 here. One of my best friends is coming on just a few minutes. Dan Spring. I've referenced him a lot on this pod. He's the guy that got me into coaching in the first place. We went to college together, played baseball at Brown U. We were in a band together. The first night we met, I think we quoted every line of the movie Dumb and Dumber, and that's when we knew we were going to be close pals. And then he was 2 years older than me, played with the Tigers and the Cardinals for a little bit, had a cup of coffee just like you. And then he moved to Hermosa Beach and started running baseball camps. And that's where I met Sean Flicky that same summer, the summer I graduated college. And we've had Flick Money on, friend of the pod. He's come to some of my sandlots in Denver and Bainbridge Island. But hey, you're going to get to hear a story or two about the rookie coach, Coach Ballgame. Before I knew anything about kids, I was a rookie, and Springer really showed me the power of positive reinforcement. I never really understood positive reinforcement until he came around, and he kind of let me know, hey, before you critique, let them know the positives that they're doing first. Why? It's going to open up their ears more. It's going to perk their interest when you show interest and intrigue, and you can let them know, hey, I love watching you play the game. I love your footwork. Now let's talk about what your chin is doing or what your hands are doing. So, looking forward to unpack that in just a few minutes with my good pal Springer. What's new in your world, man? You got anything on the top here before our guest comes?
Yeah, just a lot of baseball. We've been playing a lot of baseball, which has been a ton of fun, and just buttoning up the details on a couple of exciting things that going to be bringing out to the community out here, which myself and the Diesel are excited about. We're kind of seeing a need for something in between this high level club stuff and Little League. Folks get kind of stuck in between, and so like I said, we're finalizing some details on a potential developmental league that I'm really excited about, where we get to do nicknames and make it fun, and there's baseball IQ, and we're learning, and there's no sitting. It's you're either hitting, playing infield, or playing outfield, and we're rotating through. And I think it's going to be really awesome to help raise baseball IQ and just spread love, like unconditional love. And that's where kids grow the most. So excited about that. And then also have a camp coming up. We're going to do 3 weeks of camps in December. So that's going to be a blast. Can't wait for that. But we've got a special guest that just jumped in, Coach. I say we get right to it.
We do. Springer's here. Before we bring him on, the big news from corporate, the Chad Chop is going to join me at the Austin, Texas Sandlot. So if you live anywhere in Texas, then you need to drive to Austin November 29th, and we're going to do it. It might be the 30th. I can't remember, but it's in that ballpark, and Chopper's coming. So a Chopper ball game sandlot in Austin, Texas. I've already invited Jake Arrieta and Ian Happ. They have not responded or seen the message, and probably will never see it. But hey, the old college try nonetheless. Folks, our guest is here. He was in my wedding, one of my best pals. Springer, can you hear us? Can you see us?
I can see you. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. Meet my good pal, Chad Chopper, Springer. You guys both played at a high level in college. Then you got drafted. You pounded the pave for a few years. There was a smell of coffee. And then you basically both went right into coaching right after that. So Spring, Chop, Spring, bang, there you go.
Bang. What's up? Thanks
Nice
for being here.
you.
Nice to meet you too.
Great to hear. This is my first podcast ever, so I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I've already given you.
Do they usually start with you inviting the entire state of Texas to drive to Austin?
That's
how we start every pod.
Starts.
That's how we start every pod.
Nice Rhode Island. Very like Rhode Island. Easy to get everywhere in a car. It's a small state from what I understand.
I've already told the listener, Springer, the first night we met, I was a freshman, you were a junior at Brown, and we definitely quoted the entire movie Dumb and Dumber. I'm not sure who was Lloyd, who was Harry, but that was pretty much love at first sight. And then we had a catcher, Cameron Mitchell, who played music along with us. and we're like, we got to get a band together. So literally, like day 3 of my college experience, I'd met my best friends. We'd already created a band. And then my dad, Doug Lowe, just packed my drum set into a bunch of boxes, shipped it to the Brown U mailroom, and we actually had a gig about 3 doors down from the mailroom early that freshman year. So all that to say, it's good to have you on the pod, and it's good to have you as one of my best pals, brother. Thanks for coming on.
It's great to be here. A lot of great Brown memories. We had an epic gig a couple months ago back there, and I just got back from New York. I was at a wedding, which was another Brown wedding, so it was like a giant reunion, New York City. A lot of good memories from that time in Rhode
Yeah,
Island.
and I'm kind of, I mean, I don't know, have a lot of friends that stay so tight with the college crew, but we've got a pretty tight knit crew, Chopper. This Brown crew that played baseball, I just think for me anyway, I grew up under a rock in a small town in North Carolina. So going to Brown University, where literally every culture, ethnicity, religion is right there in front of you, it's wide open. So the relationships that I gravitated towards early on in that first year at Brown, it's huge for me, and it's actually what got me to California. Is Springer called me up when I graduated, and he's like, "Hey, I'm done throwing 93 miles an hour in Johnson City, Tennessee. I'm moving to Hermosa Beach. Why don't you come out there? I've got a room for you, and we'll start coaching baseball." And that was the beginning of my coaching life. And I've said this on the pod, Springer. I was not a great coach out of the gates. Flicky says I had the energy of 20 people, but I had a lot of learning to do. Maybe take us back to that first summer. We had quite a crew of coaches, but maybe this will give the listener a bit of a pump up. Like, what were my I don't want to call them weaknesses, but where was there room to grow for a rookie Coach Ballgame back then?
If I'm not mistaken, was that your first coaching experience? Youth coaching experience? Was that summer?
It was. I might have lied to you and told you that I had done some coaching prior, but really, I was a rookie, big time.
I don't know how that slipped through the spring training HR department back then. That was a huge miss on our part. We still don't have an HR department to this day, 20 years later. So, yeah. So I had a good head start because I had the great fortune of having 2 to 3 incredible coaching mentors in my life before I even started considering doing this for a living. And Slicky being one of them, and then my good buddy Brendan Sullivan, who I actually just saw 2 nights ago out here. It's great. So I showed up in California with this vision of how I wanted to do things, and some chops, with all due respect to the chop currently on the pod. And James, you showed up with just, I think the energy of 20 men is a great picture, great way to paint Coach Ballgame. I would say that some of that energy was possibly misguided, and not in a bad way, but in a sort of, we're all at some level functions of or reflections of how we were coached as kids. And James, your playing experience better than I do, certainly pre-Brown. But if I'm not mistaken, you probably came from an environment that most people came from, which was a more screaming, yelling. The way to get results is to push, push, push. Not a negative reinforcement world. And that's where I think initially your natural reaction was to maybe respond to kids and situations through that lens. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I said this before you came on, you really introduced me to the idea of positive reinforcement. Prior to that, even in college with our college coach, there was a lot of negative reinforcement. And I kind of fed off that. I guess I just had to, because I grew up, other than my dad, who just sat back with a Hawaiian shirt unbuttoned and laughed the whole game. There were a lot of coaches that that's the way they taught. And if I popped out to first base, there was some yelling, maybe some cussing, and I just thought, well, that's Creed. That's how I need to react. But when I got to California and started coaching with you, you didn't just talk about this idea of positive reinforcement, but you really showed me, and you said, you know what, this kid who's missing this ground ball, love your energy, Coach Ballgame, but the way you reacted to him missing and his lack of effort, that kid doesn't love baseball anymore. They might have never loved it, but they definitely don't love it now. And without being mean, obviously you were showing positive reinforcement by reinforcing me as a coach. You were allowing me to fail and then figure out, wait a second, we don't have to scream negative things at this kid to get them to do what we want. And that first summer and that first 5 years that we ran camps, and which, by the way, if you live in South Bay or anywhere in LA, go to Dan Springs Camp, Spring Training Baseball Academy. He's been doing it for 20 years, but that was my grad school. And then Flicky just sprinkles on even more of that positive reinforcement. And you guys put your arm around me. You said, okay, let's take all of this energy, but let's get into the business of reeling it in. I guess my question is, since we both grew up in that yelly environment, then where was the change for you?
I so my I had a wide range of coaching styles in my playing days. From, I had some very positive coaches, but tough in a loving way, but not yellers, not screamers, but demanding of energy and effort, and the things that in the coaching community we call controllables, which I think is a huge part of being an effective coach at any level, is emphasizing this idea that we can only control what we can control. And, bad hops, bad calls, things like that are not worth our energy. So we can still be, set high expectations for our players and encourage them to give their best effort. But when the best effort is there and the results aren't there every time, especially in baseball, that's okay. That's actually, you mentioned, that's part of the learning process. And, in terms of how the screaming intensity, negative kind of hyper emotional reaction to those mistakes goes, when a kid makes a mistake, when he makes an error, and let's just keep talking about baseball because we can talk about any sport here. It's all, you can switch the sports out. It's the same in youth soccer and youth volleyball and water polo and all that right now. But when a kid lets a ball go between his legs, he already feels bad, right? That was not his intent, was to make an error, right? He was, trying to make the play and didn't want to let himself down or his teammates down or his parents down or, the situation in the game or whatever, even in practice. So when that kid's already down on himself, like, what a bad idea to pile on him when he's already down, right? Like, that first reaction that he's having is genuine and I think healthy in a lot of ways, because kids that make mistakes and then don't care, that's a little bit more concerning sometimes than the kids who do care. And it's just part of the learning process is, how do we deal with that, right? And a lot of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, they don't have the tools yet. They haven't played enough baseball to learn how to respond to that. And when we as coaches pile on after that mistake, then they're like, oh, okay, so when I make a mistake, I should be harder on myself, and I should, call myself names and throw my hat and throw my glove and, kick the cooler in the dugout. That doesn't make anything better. That doesn't prepare kids for the next play. So, and it's hard for us because as coaches, we're so invested. As parents, and James, I know you coach your daughters. I'm coaching my son in, 9 of the 10 sports he plays, even though I don't know anything about half of them. We have desires and expectations for our kids, for our players, and even the players who aren't, our family that we put our time into, and teaching them that the mistakes are part of the game, and that the resiliency of recovering from those mistakes is what matters. You're never going to not make mistakes in any sport, and even in sports where success is a little bit easier to come by, right? Like the completion percentage of the best quarterback in the NFL, whoever that is not 250 like it is for the average major league player, right? And when you look at how difficult baseball is, the bounce back, the resiliency from those physical errors is paramount because it happens all the time. And rather than piling on, find some positive in what they did, because there's almost no chance that even on a routine ground ball that they did something right there, right? Mm-hmm. Unless they just stood there and like watched the ball roll past them into the outfield, which you could work with young kids happens sometimes. So like we can address that, but find something that they can build on, right? And then sprinkle in what they could have done differently or maybe better. And sometimes there's nothing they can do. They did everything right and they just didn't make the play. And okay, move on next one. Where if we pile on and make a bigger deal of it than it actually is, or make it feel to them that it's bigger than they already feel it is, we're really robbing them of the opportunity to make the next play, which in baseball comes almost instantly, right? There's not, Tom Brady, I don't even think he plays anymore, does he? So that's how little I know about football, right? You throw an interception in football, you go and you sit on the bench, right? You've got like your defense is out there. You've got some time to kind of process that and work through it. Basketball, you airball, you got to run back on defense. There's going to be some time before you get another opportunity to get a touch. But, you drop a ball at shortstop, pitcher has the ball, the next pitch is coming to you. And we got to have that real short memory. And that's a skill that takes practice, like everything else we're doing on the field. And I think it starts with very few kids that I've coached. And I've coached, upwards of 30,000 kids now, just sort of innately bounce back at the younger ages. Some might fake it better than others, but they're all, frustrated or upset or embarrassed by mistakes, just sort of naturally. And, it's our job to give, as parents and as coaches, to give them tools to handle that in a way that's going to make them more likely to succeed on the next play, or the next at bat, or the next inning, or the next game, or the next season. We can get as kind of big picture as we want. Good season, bad season, good inning, bad inning.
Yeah. Chopper, I'm going to let you respond to that. I'm not going to commandeer the whole thing, but I will say that another great aspect of kind of my grad school there at spring training with you and with Flick Money was you found that balance of meeting each kid on their playing field, not pushing them away from the game, a positive reinforcement, but also building character and finding that fine line. And a lot of times that was through the art of baseball cards. I learned how to give out baseball cards for good choices from the camp that you guys did. I also learned how to build trust and connect with the kids by giving out nicknames, which I learned at your camp as well. Just simple things that when I go around the country now, everybody's like, that's brilliant. Nicknames, baseball cards, brilliant. Just I think doing simple better is the key. Chopper, roll with that.
I completely agree with everything that you just said, Springer. I don't have a ton to add off of that. I completely agree. You've got to find a way to put a positive spin on it. The term I use is we have to be comforters in chief in game. When they make a mistake, like, can you get them back in the moment? Can you encourage them? Can you remind them that they have the coolest shoes in the world? I had a kid over the weekend who was 0 for his first 4. And I walked up to him and I was like, dude, I just want you to be telling yourself you're the GOAT. Like, just start walking to the plate. I'm the GOAT, and then see the ball and be the GOAT. You're a savage. Like, let's go. Mm-hmm. Deep breath, have fun, smile, and he hits a rocket. Now he could have struck out again and I'd still walk by it. You're still the GOAT. Like, so what, but no, I love it. It's that wisdom. And you've played. So all of us have played, and we know how bad we felt when we screwed up. And we know that our coach piled on most of the time. And it's like, oh, that didn't help, No, I know I made the error. I told one of our kids, he's primarily plays shortstop a lot for us. So I put him into pitch just because we were end of a game. Game was kind of a little bit out of hand, but I wanted to see what I had with this young man. So I put him on the mound, and I even told him, like, dude, you don't pitch a ton. I just want to see what I got. I know you're not scared, and I know that you're going to be awesome. Well, we made like 4 errors behind them, and we don't make a lot of errors. Like, we're really clean. In fact, I don't think we had an error the whole weekend, seriously. And then we made like 4 behind him. So he comes off, and everyone's sad, and I'm like, his nickname's G, and I go, G, you should be walking around like, I thought we were friends. Like, you guys make plays for everyone else, but like, I get on the bump just to like lighten the mood. It's like, guys, who cares? Like, no one's trying to make errors. But that's the mindset. I love it. Clearly, there's a reason why you've been doing it for so long and impacted so many lives. Coach Ballgame, hit him with another question. I want to hear more about a young Coach Ballgame, really.
Well, man, the drip from wherever you begin, your whatever path you have in life, there's something right there at the beginning that really molds you. And I think every time I coach, I look back on those first couple years of learning and coaching and watching great coaching, watching bad coaching, learning from it. There's a lot of gratitude here from me for you, Spring, and I talk about you and Flick a lot on this pod because somebody's got to shape you in one way or the other. I've never asked you this. Why do you coach?
It's a great question. I think the simplest answer is I just love baseball so much. I actually didn't have post professional baseball. I didn't have necessarily a goal or an aspiration to coach myself. Uh, I'm sure that you might have experienced this post your days, whether it was at the end of high school or college, or for me, a couple of years of pro ball. I didn't feel burned out at the end, but I was like, you know what? I've put so much of myself into baseball for so long, and I played, other sports and all the way through, and including in high school, which is a topic I assume you guys have talked about, and something we can talk about today, kind of the value of being a multi-sport athlete. But obviously, you end up in college, it's baseball, and um, I was like, I had no ill will towards the game. You and I'm sure Chop too have played with guys when the game's over, they leave with like a chip on their shoulder, like they didn't get what they felt like they deserved, or like it ended on, it was unfair how it ended for them. And I didn't have any of those feelings. I was at peace with my own playing career, having made it probably further than anybody expected me to make it as a normally sized, mediumly soft throwing righty out of the Ivy League. There's not a
You
huge
had my
market for us.
number, man. You had my number. I couldn't get you.
There you go. I like moved out here with really no plans, and then so that was end of 2000 and end of like August of 2004. And I was like, all right, cool. I'll figure something else out to do. And by like November, I just was missing it so much, just being around it. Not playing, I still to this day have never played in like a men's league softball game, but just like being around the game. So went to the local baseball field here and was kind of like, hey, can I help out? Right, just as simple as that. There wasn't any grander plan or career choice. It's just like, man, I got to be around the game. And then I had coached kids for years and years. I mean, my coaching career started when I was basically 13, and I sort of aged out of the camp that I went to in DC. Coach Max, my OG baseball mentor, John McCarthy, who's still doing it.
Blicky talked about him a lot too.
Yeah, so Johnny is sort of the godfather of youth baseball coaching in our little DC world, which Flicky is certainly a member, despite him not going up there. So I'd had a lot of experience coaching with kids and enjoyed it. And then as I got back and was around, some kids and hadn't a little bit of distance from the game for myself playing, it wasn't. I mean, this is going to sound weird. It wasn't so like I didn't think that the work I was doing then, the work was as important as I do now. It was just a way to stay around baseball, and a lot has changed in the last 20 years. Not just in terms of the overall youth sports culture and how competitive it's getting to the detriment of the kids' enjoyment, I think, and how serious it is at younger and younger ages, and how intense it is, and how we're seeing kids quit sports younger and younger. And I think that's entirely a product of the energy that parents and adults are bringing to youth sports. Now, I think you and I both feel that what we're doing is more important than just coaching baseball. But at the beginning, 20 years ago, it was a little bit more innocent. It was, just little league. And, especially like in the last 10 years, it's kind of the intensity and, the prevalence of, 40,000 U5 club teams that are popping up, I think it's not good for the youth baseball community. And now I feel like what I'm doing is I still have as much fun being on the field and coaching and being around the game with the kids, but there's a greater sense of purpose and I think need for what you and I do without sitting here and just going to pat myself on the back and give you the virtual pat on the back for the rest of the pod. But I do feel a much greater sense of responsibility to serve the kids in a way that I think is harder to find in these days. So, my journey has gone from just, I love baseball, I want to be around it, to this is fun. I love teaching. I love coaching. Camp's awesome, to feeling all those things, but now sort of a higher calling. I don't think what we're doing is any different. I think the space has changed, which kind of makes our approach much more needed and important. So that's one of the big things that's still motivating me. I'm not saying I wouldn't still love baseball, I want to be around it, but now 20 years into this, and I'm not changing careers at this point. For the next 20 years, hopefully I get to go to the baseball field. There is this kind of bigger sense of, how do we help the pendulum kind of swing back in a more positive, developmental, human and emotional and baseball space, instead of just how many, weekend rings can we win in the middle of December, and what's the ranking of the club team I'm on nationally at some tournament that was invented out of nowhere. Like I think we all agree there's way too much of that, and it's kids just want to play and they just want to be with their friends, and the important thing for us as parents and coaches is to make sure they get something of value out of it. And the beauty of youth sports is you learn, like we were talking about at the beginning, like how to bounce back, resiliency, how to deal with failure, how to, keep yourself motivated and stay positive. Like that's youth sports is the time to do that, and to learn how to do that when the outcomes don't really matter, right? Like, if you win or lose a game when you're 9, right, or have a bad reaction to something when you're 9 or 10, there's no long-term outcome there that's going to shape the rest of your life, right? Where if you don't develop those skills of how to be resilient and come back and deal with people that maybe you don't get along with in a team setting, like all these things, we learn it now, so that when you're, going for a job interview and you get, rejected, you're an actor, like you learn how to deal with failure in real life, or like relationships in life, or struggles. Like you learn the tools to deal with it when it matters when you're younger. And that piece of youth sports, I feel, is not the primary goal in most places anymore. And it should be. And I think, I don't know if you said it, Chopper James, but balance is key. I don't think a wholly uncompetitive youth sports space is necessarily healthy either, right? Like if kids are making mistakes and not trying, it's not healthy for them to tell them they're awesome, right? And I think there's a lot of that. Like, that was great, you're perfect no matter what. Like, I don't think that's healthy as a parent or as a coach. But finding the balance between, kind of nurturing their beings and teaching them things that are going to serve them way after they're done playing sports, whatever sport it might be, whenever that ends. But also, teaching them how to be competitive in a good way, right? And, how to set goals and not just kind of sleepwalk through the experience. And finding that balance, I think, is really hard.
I think that's a good way of saying it, sleepwalk, because as a 22-year-old rookie coach, if the kid was lacking effort going after a fly ball, I almost wanted to wean him out. Let's wean out the non-elite or the kids that don't want to be here. But being able to sleepwalk my way through and watching great coaching and mentorship, and watching you and Flicky actually try and create a great life for this kid, so they can be a good father one day, or push through the tough times of studying for their SAT or entrance exams, whatever it might be, just meandering my way through. As you electricians and doctors and nurses that are first-time coaches that maybe have never played the game of baseball or whatever you're coaching, allow yourself to sleepwalk and just find your way through. Chopper, do you have any sleepwalk stories of kind of finding your way? Because I mean, I love everything you do as a coach.
I wanted to, yeah, I've learned a ton by when I was younger, and I was deemed a coach with his hair on fire. And I thought I was doing it the right way. Holding kids to a standard. You discipline those you care about, you discipline those you love. That's all fine and good. But if the kids don't know that you love them first, you're going to lose some. You won't lose all of them, because like you said, Coach Ballgame, you could respond to that negativity. I could respond to that. If a coach said something bad about me, I'd be like, yeah, he's right, I got to be better. And it motivated me, but not everyone's like that. You got to know your audience. But I do want to touch on this conversation I had today with a parent, where they called me and we had a conversation about playing time. And it was like, We talked for about an hour, and the biggest thing I wanted him to know at the end of it was, listen, I love your son. I love you as parents. We're here to partner with you. And so, like, understand that I'm focused on his character. I know that you want him to play more, and I get that. And if that means he has to go to another club, I support that. I love your boy. I love you guys. But at the end of the day, we're trying to teach life lessons here. And that competitive piece, sometimes that gets in the way of playing time, you know, and it's a reality of club. So it's finding that balance, but it's making sure that, we've said this in previous podcasts, parents, when you're looking for a coach, ask them what their goals are. If they tell you I want to be a nationally ranked club and I've had X, Y, and Z, run for the hills. If they say we love your kid, we care about him, we want to work on his heart, we want him to teach him to have resiliency and character and empathy and learn how to work hard and respond if something doesn't go his way, and be a swan above water, right? Well, his feet are doing this underwater, but don't show it, you know, and learn how to just kind of navigate the difficulties of life in a positive way where he can be a fountain and not a drain, then you're in the right place. Obviously, Coach Springer, like hearing you talk, like that's your vibe, right? And that's why the good Lord's blessed you with 20 plus years and hopefully another 20 years of impacting lives in a positive way. What's one thing, Coach Spring, that you've really learned from? Is there a turning point where you had a moment with a player or a parent or in a game where maybe you reacted to a call where you're like, dude, that's not it? You know, is there something you can point to?
For me personally,
Yeah.
I mean, I had a few moments as a player. You know, like I said, I was kind of wrapped up in a big bear hug around positive coaching when I was very, very young. So, you know, for me personally, I wake up every day, you know, thankful for the people that brought me to the point where, you know, I am now and where I was able to start with, you know, a big running start, you know, in the coaching space. And I was fortunate enough where I didn't have to figure out a lot of this as a coach. I was prepared for that. But I'm going to pump up my other, but I got two really close friends named Brendan Sullivan. So James, this is my our buddy Brendan from my high school team and then from Brown. So I was competitive, super competitive as a player. I was not a you know, trash the water bottle, scream type kid, but like I had fire in I think a good way. And I'll never forget this one moment where certainly a moment of weakness as a player, and also kind of brought home the power of having great teammates, which is something that I know, you know, James, you talk about a lot, and something we spend a lot of time on with the kids. So we're playing down um, in Florida in high school, and we, you know, went to a small prep school in DC, kind of like at Brown James. We were in the gym for our preseason, right? Maybe if it got to 30 degrees, we go outside and try to play long toss. And like at Brown, we go down for spring break and play some of these really good Florida, you know, high school teams where they were already on their 15th game, and even if we were on our 50th game, they were all way bigger, stronger, more talented. And so we're down there, kind of getting our butts kicked as usual in preparation for coming back up north. So we're in, and I want to say it was maybe Okeechobee or somewhere like that. We're actually got a chance to win a ball game, right? And at this point, I was a sophomore catcher, starting catcher on the varsity as a sophomore. And it's like a 1-1 ball game in the seventh, and our pitcher, you know, spins a curveball and bounces, and I go to block it, and it gets past me, and a run scores from third. And we were, you know, it's a ball that I thought I should have blocked. So I was down on myself. It was a big moment, you know. I think it was probably the bottom of the. Let's see, we played 6 innings in high school. Did you play 6 or 7 innings in high school? I can't even remember.
Seven.
Seven. Okay, so it was like, yeah, it was like bottom six, and this ball gets past me. Guy on third scores, and now we're losing 2-1. And we come back in the dugout, and not only am I like frustrated myself, I choose to go sulk in the corner of the dugout by myself. Right, with the rest of the team, they're up on the top step, and hey, we got one more chance. We got 3 more outs. It's top of the seventh. This game isn't over, and I'm sitting there in the corner, kind of with my head in my hands, feeling sorry for myself. And my buddy Brendan comes over, and he was the other sophomore on the varsity, so I give him huge credit for being, you know, one of the other younger guys with some maturity. He puts his arm around me and goes, "Dude, said something like, that's over, right? This game isn't over. You can't change that play. Get up off the bench. We need you, right? Like this. Be sad when the game's over, right? Have an emotional reaction after the last out, but like we're still in this, and I need you. Your team needs you. Get up." And it was like a big slap across the face in like a giant bear hug loving type of way. And I'm pretty sure that was the last time I ever, you know, spent any of my energy. Plenty of other failures on the field, but it was the last time I hope that I really spent my energy feeling sorry for myself and kind of internalizing that woe is me, where it's like, wait, I'm part of a team here. And yeah, I can feel however I feel about that. But putting my energy back onto my teammates was the right thing to do there. And when we care so much, like I did, sometimes it's hard in the moment when you're so emotionally raw for what happens to make a good decision. And in those moments, which are totally natural, like I said earlier, James, like I'd rather see a kid care and respond the wrong way than sometimes not care at all, right? Because that's something you can work with. Like with James, when you showed up and you had all this energy and it was sometimes misguided, but like at your core you cared. You're like, all right, there's a spark that with some, there's the silly putty with some massaging we can work on. And from that moment forward, I hope, I did my best to not be that type of player. And to have a teammate who was also the other youngest guy on the team be the person to lift me up there, I think was massively important. And if I think that's a sign of really good culture on teams. Yeah. Like I don't coach club teams, so I don't like take the same group of kids and kind of stay with them. I do some fall stuff where it's like 6 weeks, and we work in just those 6 weeks a lot on team culture and how to support each other. But if you have teammates stepping up to do that, that's the sign that it's kind of working from the leadership standpoint, from the head coach, the assistant coach, and it's on its way down. And if I don't see a ton of that necessarily, with 6 and 7-year-olds because they're still learning. So that's when, the younger the kids are, the more important is that the adults in the room are the ones that model that good behavior and kind of teach, here's how we respond in those moments, with the goal being that, the kid that's having that experience learns from it. So then also through like coaching osmosis, everyone else in the dugout sees, all right, here's how we're going to respond. And then maybe next time, little Johnny strikes out, instead of the coach coming over and patting him on the head, it's 4 of his other teammates that are starting to do that. And that's, I think the most powerful teams are when the team's lifting themselves, each other up. Obviously leadership and coaching, the head coach is important, but kind of setting the culture and then letting the kids take over. I think that's when you kind of hit a home run with your dugout environment, how the kids are treating each other. And that takes work, that takes practice, that takes energy, that takes maturity, to see the moment. And instead of focusing on, the run we gave up and the game we might lose, seeing, the opportunity there to not only right the ship in that moment for the rest of that game, but also kind of bigger picture. Hey, this is our 5th game of the season, right? We've got 30 more games to go. Things like this are going to happen again. Let's prepare ourselves for the next time, there's a strikeout in a key moment, right? Or our pitcher gives up a walk in a key moment. How are we going to be prepared for that situation? Because as we know in baseball, those situations happen in every inning. There's adversity in literally every inning in baseball. And there's no escaping that. So the question isn't how do we avoid those moments? It's how do we, embrace them and get the most out of them so that we're better prepared for the next time they happen.
Beautiful, man. We talk culture all the time. Create that culture. And I feel like there is a way that all the craziness, all the yelly parents, all the clinging to the fence parents, all the micromanaging, elbow up, yelly parents, there's a way to nip that in the bud at the very beginning with clear expectations from the coach. And we talk about these expectations on this pod a lot to create that culture. Obviously, Sully, who I know as well, somebody showed him how to be a great teammate, and it was probably a coach. Might have been a basketball coach, might have been a teacher, but he knew how to wake you up in a bear hug kind of way, that you never forgot that moment, and it has shaped the way you coached, and that has actually shaped the way I have coached, because I watched you do the same thing with thousands of kids in my 20s. So man, never underestimate the power of a loving moment where you're just thinking big picture and playing the long game, huh, Chop?
100%. No, and I love that you brought up modeling it as a coach, especially the younger the kids are. And I told my high school group this last year, like, guys, it's the law of diminishing return. If I'm screaming at you guys constantly, eventually you're going to tune me out. And I don't want that, like you need to hold each other accountable and do it in a loving way and be open to the constructive criticism of your brother. Like know that they love you, and accountability is part of that love. And also know your teammate, right? So like, don't go up to the guy that everyone knows he's going to have a little bit of an outburst and he's going to take it out on you if you come up to him at that moment. Go ahead and let that happen. And then when to kind of just, maybe you don't say anything. Maybe you just sit next to him and tap him on the leg. Like, hey, I'm here for you. I love you, but it's part of being a family. This group I have right now, I was telling my coach yesterday, I'm like, I can't wait. They're 9 and 10 years old. Some of them are even younger. It's like, we're going to have this group for 9 or 10 years together. They're going to know each other's thoughts, and really how to motivate each other and to get each other back in the moment with humor, or whatever it is for that young man. So it's, you guys know, I'll say it out loud. Coaching's the most amazing thing that we can do, because it's that ripple effect.
Totally. And it's, it, not to take like the negative side, but like those impactful moments, they work the other way too, if it's not the right response. Yeah. Right. So, as positive that response, that moment was for me, the way Sully, if he had walked up and like been like, what are you doing, man? This is our one chance to win the game. And that like, that could have gone in 2 different ways, and it would have left a similar impactful impression on me, but in the other way. Right.
You might not have played professionally. You might not have coached.
Totally. Right.
Yeah.
And, when it's, you with your high school team, and I have not coached a kid older than the age of 12. So, we've got these 2 different perspectives, which I think is great. But, the younger the kids are, the more impressionable they are, and the more those moments kind of stick with them, which is why I think it's, so important that we are taking this message to sort of a ground up, right, rather than a top down. Obviously, I mean, I don't spend any time at high school fields. I'm sure there's, the good, the bad, the ugly, and, same thing in Pony and, that 13, 14-year-old age range. And, but man, those moments when you're younger and having that positive experience or negative experience really can, make a kid go down one of 2 paths with youth sports. And, the paths, I think, should lead to the quality of the experience and what you get out of it, and not where it goes. And that's, something you said about elite, next level, and, what kind of words to run away from that are thrown around everywhere. But like might be a cliche, but like the value of sports is the journey. It's not the end game. And like that end game may or may not happen. We can't predict right now how some 8-year-old's, soccer career is going to pan out when he's 18. But we do know that, how he's treated and the experience he has now will affect whether or not he even continues to play, and then what type of player, teammate, athlete, person he'll be. So on one hand, quote unquote, it doesn't matter in terms of the result. Like the score of an 8-year-old game doesn't matter, or, your record when you're 9 doesn't matter. But in another way, what we're doing with kids matters more than anything. Right. So it's like, it's reframing the goal, right? It's redefining what matters, like what's the important part. And that's what, like I said, in the past 10 years, I feel like it's not just around here and you guys are in Orange County, it's in all parts of the country. I feel like it's in all sports, it's at all levels, where the goals have shifted in a way that's, I don't think, benefiting most kids overall, depending on, and obviously there are exceptions to every rule everywhere. But I think kind of if you look at where the pendulum's swinging, we're saying that too much the wrong things matter, right? Like, here's what matters. Like with next level, we got to get here. We got to do this. We got to win that. We got to be ranked here. And what really matters is kind of being pushed to the side in favor of those things that don't really matter. And, that's, I think, an important message. And I think it's a harder sell right now, if I'm being honest, which is sort of where the energy's going in youth sports. And James, you might speak to that. I'm still, I talk to people and I read and I listen and I study and but James, you've been all over the place. Do you feel, the same thing on your Sandlot tour? And I know that your Sandlot tour is going to attract somebody who's probably more predisposed to, be in line with what Coach Ballgame represents, but you see kind of the same challenges wherever you go.
100%. It's all over. And we have these coaches clinics right after the Sandlot. And that's been the most eye-opening part, is to talk to these grown men who preach what I and Chopper try to preach, what you try to preach, which is build character, teach love of play the long game. And they feel like a fish out of water in that elite community when they take their kid to a travel ball community. And I say, right on, man. And I say, I quote Mark Twain all the time: when you're in the side of the majority, it's time to pause and take a look in the mirror. And you did that with the culture you created there in Hermosa Beach with Flicky, by storytelling and playing music and nicknames and joy and baseball cards. You built this culture of something's wrong with youth sports. Let's flip that. Why are all the pros on TV? Why does it look like they're chewing gum and having the most fun? Yet here at a 9U baseball game, it's anxiety ridden. It doesn't have to be that way. So it's all over the place. It's why we started this pod. How can we make youth coaching better? And I know slowly but surely we are creating an impact. I can see it one attaboy at a time, one attagirl at a time, one educated parent and coach at a time. That's how you do it. To close up our chat today, and we could talk all day. Maybe we'll have to do part 2. I've prepared some kind of scenarios, and these are bite-sized. So I want to pose it to each of you, 2 of the best coaches I know, like just little scenarios that a little league coach might run into. How would you approach it? Before we get to those, we'll keep these maybe 30-second answers if we can. Bite-size them. What's the first thing you teach your assistant coaches? And you do a great job, Springer. You've built this culture where former players are now your coaches. I do the same thing. I take a lot of pride in it. But we'll start with you, Springer. First thing you teach your assistant, first thing you taught me was what?
Well, for me, like you said, I sort of have this pipeline, and it's treat the kids the way that you were treated, right? Which works if there's like this generational culture. I think that's hugely important, right? And when I do my, I'm sure you do the same, pre-staff meetings, on Monday before camp, or kind of getting the kids ready for another, kids by kids. I mean, we're not kids anymore, James. Sorry.
Well,
getting the
speak for
younger
yourself.
coaches. Yeah, you're right. You're several months younger than I am. Yeah, it's just like, look, this is a game. This is supposed to be fun, right? We're here to teach, right? There's all these things that we want to accomplish in terms of, baseball development, which you and I are both passionate about, and you too, Chop, and there's human development, but like, let's not forget these are kids playing a game, right? And our job for the next 6 hours today at camp, and for the week, and for the summer, is to make sure that they're having as much possible fun around baseball as possible. And it's not recess fun, which is something I say. There's baseball fun and there's goofball fun. And James, I always use the example, hey, after camp, I'm gonna go have goofball fun. I'm gonna take my kids to the beach. I'm gonna go play drums with James. And like, that's a different kind of fun. When we're at baseball, it's baseball fun, but let's make sure that at the end of the day, those kids are walking off the field smiling, being like, that was so much fun. I can't wait to go do that again. Like, that's the baseline. And then when kids want to be there and they're engaged and they are waking up early, I mean, I get these, I might be past my 30 seconds. It's like, hey, Dan, it was, the parents come to drop off and like, my kid woke up at 6 today and had his uniform on at 6:02. And this is the earliest he's woken up all year because he's so excited to go to baseball camp. Like, that's the biggest first win. And if the culture is like, let's make sure these kids are having fun. And there's a lot of things that go into that's not just like, juggle balls for them, make sure they're having fun. But if they're having fun and they want to be there and they're excited to go back, that makes everything else we're trying to do behind the scenes with the skill development and the emotion development and the teammate development way easier if there's that, like, this is enjoyable and I want to be here.
Chopper.
Yeah, before camp, it's, hey, we're going to speak in a positive tone. Think before you speak, phrase it in a positive way, and make sure they have fun. And I want them to learn one thing. And then the thing that I took from Coach Ballgame from watching you coach is reinforce the positive. So if you've got one kid who's being a goofball and the other kid who's coaching you, hustling, like, hey, little Coach Ballgame, love your hustle, man, love that. And then the other kid who's being a goofball will see that, and then sure enough, man, he'll go where I used to always be like, hey, Coach Chop, let's go, lock in. Like, what do we got? And you just reinforce the positive. And that always works. When they have fun, they want to come back. It should be a birthday party, a structured baseball birthday party.
Yeah, what you say right there, real quick, James, and I didn't mean to hijack the little segment here, but in a kid's mind, negative attention and positive attention feel the same.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not, who knows what's going on with any kid individually. With, it might be the fifth kid of five and, he's whatever. Right. Yeah. But if a kid's not getting attention, he's going to do something to get it. And it's a lot easier to get negative attention in a lot of ways. So when you're rewarding the positive, like you're talking about Chopper, James, you and I do with baseball cards, you're sending a message to those kids that might be thinking, hey, I need attention in another way. Like, hey, I can make a good decision here and then still get the attention and, that I'm sort of craving. And that positive reinforcement is a great way, to teach that rather than giving them the attention for the negative. That feels good for a lot of kids because they are just attention is attention, right? Like someone caring about me, whether it's good or bad, feels the same. Or if it's like, hey, let's make sure that the next time they're kind of feeling like, someone's not paying attention, I'm going to do something positive to get my teammates' attention, my coach's attention. That's a massive win. And that's something I think all parents and coaches need to remind themselves, especially when they do with the younger ones. I wouldn't claim to know what motivates a 17-year-old, high school kid on the JV. But, when we're dealing with kids, they want to be recognized. And, if we can teach them, they get recognized in a positive way, it's a big win for them and for the culture. So go ahead, James.
Yeah, go ahead, Chopper.
I had an experience with a camper, his first ever time at our camp. And he was really upset with one of the rules we had for Wiffle Ball World Series, where he needed the home team to have helmets on. But we were using a wiffle ball bat and a wiffle ball, so we didn't have helmets on, and he couldn't figure out who was on offense and who was on defense. I didn't know at the time, but he's on the spectrum, and he threw a huge fit. And I put him on my golf cart. I gave him an otter pop, and we drove away, and I just let him talk. I'm like, hey, dude, what's up? Like, what do you got? And he's like, well, I was confused, and there's no helmets, and this isn't the right way to do it. And what kind of camp are you running? And X, Y, and Z. I'm like, hey, dude, like, it's okay. Eat your otter pop, catch your breath, reset. It's going to be fine. He's been at every camp ever since. We've had 3 or 4 since then. And his mom's like, man, this is the first camp he's ever like, can't wait to go back to, And it's like, yeah, dude, we love your son. We love him. We can't wait to see him. My wife gives him a big hug. And that could have gone one of 2 ways if you're not looking through the right lens as a coach. This kid's an outcast and he's causing no, dude, like win the heart. So that's the lens we should look at.
Beautiful. Absolutely. I'll answer my own question. I tell the assistant coaches, be the most positive, fun version of yourself and engage with each kid like they're a human. And I have a lot of teenage coaches. So the one thing I've noticed that kind of transcends the age, no matter if they're 5 or 17, is building trust. If you, as the leader, can build trust with that 17-year-old coach and that 5-year-old kid, I think the culture is set. So that would be my answer for first thing you teach your assistants. The scenario of a kid giving no effort, 30-second bite size. Where do you go? Springer, no effort from this kid.
Yeah, in my experience, I said I don't run club teams so much or at all. So, and we, coach my son's little league team. In my experience, most of the kids that fall into the I'm not going to give any effort, they feel like they don't have a way to contribute, and that for a lot of kids, not trying feels less bad than trying and failing, right? So you try to find a way for them to feel like they can contribute and have value and are participating towards, the team's goals, whatever that is, and I see it. I still do tons of hitting lessons, and especially with the younger kids, you'll see kids go up to bat and just not swing, right? And I think a lot of that wiring is if I swing 3 times and miss 3 times and strike out, that feels really bad because I'm trying and it's still not working. Or if I just go up there and don't even try, I'm going back to the dugout either way, but I didn't put myself out there. I didn't take a risk. maybe I can blame the umpire or say the pitch was throwing too hard, and there's some sort of way to deflect that feeling of failure. So finding a way, and like I said, I think, in that sense where they're not trying, I think that's usually the result of something else happening. That's not, I don't like baseball, I don't want to be here. It's, in my experience, I haven't found a way that I feel like I can participate and contribute. So let's find that and then build from there. And then once you find that one little way to engage them, and sometimes it could be like being the fastest kid picking up the balls in the batting cage. It doesn't even have to be like baseball related, or the kid that volunteers to fill up the water bottles the quickest, right, on a water break. Like something to make them feel like there's a sense of accomplishment and they're part of the team and they have value. And then you build from there. And then they're like, okay, well, now I feel comfortable trying, and now I'm going to go after that ground ball. I'm going to take a hack at that. And if we're continuing to kind of pump them up and find ways for them to get wins in effort, even if the results aren't there, and it takes time, baseball's tough, then you've kind of reached that kid, and it's just a little bit more engaged and a little bit more effort. But I don't think really that many kids just show up and don't want to try at all. There's always something else going on underneath, and it's almost always like I'd rather feel less personal pain by not trying than trying and failing. That's kind of a double whammy, especially for young kids.
Chopper, you see a little more of the advanced kid, the older kid, coaching high school ball as well. What do you got?
You don't see lack of effort in club or high school, especially you just won't be in the program if that's the case. So you don't really have to worry about that. But at the camp, there is that fear of failure. I think that's a part of it. So it's getting down on their level, sitting down next to them or taking a knee, like, what's up, dude? Like, what's going on? Are you okay? And it's usually like, I just don't want to do it. Like, okay, why don't you come ride with me in the golf cart for a little bit and you can help me. We're going to call rotate in a minute. So you're going to call it out and you're going to be my little assistant until you're ready to get back at it. Here's an otter pop, here's a baseball card. And then before you know it, hey, coach, I want to go back out and try. All right, bet, let's go. You're the best. Have fun.
Yeah, Flicky talked about this, use the Johnny Mac method. Any kid disruptive or just not submitting to what you say, they immediately become his top assistant.
Top assistant.
We
VIP.
got to have you VIP because
hand them the clipboard and have them call out the lineup.
Give them a whistle. Bang. Let's go. Yeah,
and that takes a lot of patience, and that's something I didn't have early on. Thankfully, Spring, you modeled it, Flicky modeled it big time. But disrespect really gets to me at my core, not just with my daughters, but with any kid that's disrupting, disrespectful, not listening. Probably just the way I was raised, but it is a pet peeve. It gets to me. So, managing those feelings, as we've talked about, sleepwalking my way through my 20s, watching good coaching and good mentorship, I figured out I've got to control the way I react to disrespect, anything of that nature.
Well, I'll coach you real quick, James. Most of that disrespect isn't personal.
Right.
It's not them saying I don't like you as a person. It's something that they're trying to deal with, and they're not sure how to deal with whatever that feeling is. Right. So as the adults in the room, as the coaches, we have to remember, especially when we're dealing with kids, right? The things that might frustrate us or hurt us aren't intentional, right? They're a manifestation of something else, and our job is to not have the patience and to kind of be the adult and then kind of dig deeper and say, all right, why is this happening? This isn't like a personal attack on my character as a coach or as a person. There's something else here. And that's, why I think we love what we do, is trying to, like Chop said, like get down and figure out what's going on with that kid, and, hopefully give them some tools so that the manifestation of that feeling, whatever they're feeling, isn't disrespect or speaking out or, picking a fight with somebody in the dugout. It's, we can kind of get to the core of the genesis of the reaction that to us feels like disrespect or, whatever you might be feeling about it. It's not personal.
Yep. Would you say that's why parents and coaches overreact, is they feel like a failure in the moment?
I think there's a lot of that. We're all super invested in our kids, and we put a lot of time and energy and money and effort into them, not just in sports. And I think as parents, sometimes we feel like we're owed sort of immediate ROI on all of our investment, and then when we don't get it, that's frustrating for us, right? Like, forget sports. I got a 9 and a 7-year-old. We work really hard on them being respectful and polite and listening. And then we put a lot of energy at it, and then they don't do it. And our reaction is, well, I've invested all this time into it. Why am I not getting, my ROI out of this? Why am I not getting out of it what I feel like I should be getting out of it? And it's just reminding ourselves that it is a process, and try not to be emotional about it. And yeah, I get it. Like if you're, putting a ton of time and energy into coaching your little league team, or your son's flag football team, or whatever it is, and if it's not going the way that you want, it's hundreds of hours of our time is volunteer. I'm taking my spring training hat off and putting my daddy hat on. Like, it's a lot of time and energy, and we're also humans that have expectations and feelings, even if we're the adults in the room. And that sometimes it can be hard for us to not react emotionally, just like it's hard for a kid not to react emotionally when he makes an error. For me, when I was 16, letting the ball get past me, right? Where none of us are perfect humans, and especially when it's our kids, when we care so much and we love them so much, it's hard sometimes not to. I mean, I yell at my kids sometimes, and I'm sure you do too, and Chop, and you feel bad immediately afterwards, but it's hard to not be super emotional. I would like to think that youth sports field is one of the places it's the easiest to not be emotional, because it should be the most fun, right?
Yeah.
Yet the stories you hear are the opposite.
Totally. And that's sort of, an enigma that I'm still trying to unwrap. I don't know if we'll ever fully understand. Everybody's different, but yeah, the playing field should be the most fun for everybody. One of the things I say in my fall ball, which is it's a non-competitive program. I coach all the teams, and you talk about setting expectations. I send probably an email that's 9,000 words too long to all the parents at the beginning, sort of my expectations. But at the end, it's like, hey, if we all buy into this, right? You let the coaches, do the coaching, and you guys aren't cheering from the stands, and, there's an ump, but we're not keeping score, so don't get on him. Guess what you get to do as parents? You just get to sit there for an hour and a half on Sundays and just watch your kids play, right? And know that they're going to be treated with respect, and know that they're in good hands, and you don't have to stress about the batting lineup or the outcomes. And it's sort of almost like a light bulb for some of the parents at the end of the season. Like, oh man, that was so much fun. I just kind of showed up, and I was like half checking, the NFL scores on my phone. And so it's my kids up. And I was like, yeah, this doesn't have to be like a stressful, anxiety ridden experience. It can be like fun for everybody. And when we talk about the mirror and state expectations, the more kind of relaxed and calm and fun the parents are in the stands, the kids pick up on that energy, right? And it's not like, if you're not hanging on the fence screaming at your kid, that's not the way to get him to try hard. Like, if you do nothing and he likes baseball, he's going to try, right? It's not like, oh, my dad's not screaming at the umpire, I'm not going to try to get a hit this time. Like, that's insanity, right? So for us as parents, it's kind of like, let's chill out and just sort of enjoy this experience that we're all so lucky to have, to just go to the field and watch our 9-year-old play baseball, because it's going to end. Right? Yeah. Like, James, your dad, I still remember your dad at some games in college when we were playing at Duke, and he got to see you play until you were 22, and then it's over. And he doesn't get to see you play baseball anymore. And for most people, I mean, how lucky is Doug and Rebecca that they got to see you play baseball until you're 22? A lot of parents get to see their kid play baseball till they're 11 or 12, and then that's it. So what a shame to spend those years, those really short years, watching your kids play sport, just like angry and upset and concerned and filled with anxiety, when it should just be a really fun experience that we can all look back on and be like, man, that was awesome.
I know. Well, what a novel idea, right? To just share with your kids that I love watching you play the game, win, lose, fail, 0 for 5, whatever it might be. I love watching you play the game. But here's what I've noticed as I go around the country: unless people see it, they might hear this podcast, they might hear that great. They might read your blog or hear that great answer that you just made, but until they actually see it, until they go to your fall ball game and actually see it and feel it and hear the laughter and the cheers and the smiles, they don't know it exists. They only know what they know. So coaches out there, model it with your body language, with your tone after a strikeout. That's a huge deal.
Not to interrupt you, but modeling it. So like I coach, I'm coaching Maddox's flag football team because, I like being around my kid and don't know anything about football. And so he's at a soccer game. It's the end of last year. And it's like, he was like the championship game, right? And just the all the games before our game, it was like championship Sunday, whatever. It was like a 3-game tournament. I don't even know. And the game before us, the parents screamed at the ref so intensely that they ran on the field before time expired and basically chased the ref to the parking lot. I mean, these are 8-year-olds, and you can just feel the energy doing this. And I'm sitting in like my little foldy chair, relaxed like this. I got my hood up. I look like at the beach right before they blow the whistle to start. And Marissa takes a picture and is like, "Here's Dan before the championship game." Right. And it's just like, of course, did I want our kids to play hard? Yes. Did I want them to try to win? Yes. Did they want to play hard and try to win? Also, yes. Right. Like my intensity wasn't going to add anything to it other than anxiety and pressure.
Yeah.
Right. And, as you get shot, you probably speak this. You said you don't have any bad effort in club ball or in high school because they're not in the program. Right. So if the kids are properly motivated, we shouldn't have to do anything as parents on the sideline. Right. Except just kind of sit back and exude our own calmness so that, if we do have the kid who's constantly looking into the stands to see his parents' reaction, which you guys have all seen, right? Like rather than looking at the dugout or focus, it's like, let me see what mom and dad say. If they see mom and dad like this, they're like, oh my God. Where if they do something, look in the stands and dad's just kind of like chilling out and have a conversation, like, oh, maybe I'm good. Right. And it's a mirror. It really is a mirror. And modeling it is really important. And you do feel sometimes like, am I the crazy one? Right.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting back here in my lounge chair, like looks like I could care less. Of course, I want my son to win, but it doesn't really matter one way or the other this game. And everyone else is like, I got to teach them how to like be intense. You're like, man, they want to win. It's not like the whistle blows and they're going to sit down and not try. They're going to do that on their own. And all we can do is kind of get in the way sometimes, right? Either before the game or after the game, and just kind of staying out of the way. And what you said is the magic line. Like I just love watching you play, right? And my wife and I, Maddox is a really good athlete, and he is really into sports. Like we don't talk about the game before. We certainly don't talk about the game after, unless he wants to talk about it. And then win or lose later in the afternoon, if you bring something up, cool, let's talk. But it's not like this game's over, let's get in the car and immediately, start rolling tape from every play that happened or every at bat. And the way that we prepare for pre and post game and our general vibe towards it is, hopefully going to reflect in how he approaches games. And, so far it's working, right? Like our kid is super motivated and very competitive, but in a healthy way and doesn't feel pressure. And when the game's over, he's totally fine. And, we just have to keep staying the course and, trust our process as, parents and as coaches. My wife's a coach also. So we come.
Yeah, shout out Marissa, a great coach, great mentor
with
in
a lot of
her own right.
But like you said, most parents don't come from a sports background playing, and even fewer come from an actual like professional coach background. So for those of us that are lucky enough to have been brought up in that culture and play sports and be coaches, it's more and more incumbent on us to kind of be the personality, attitude leaders in the stands, right? At our at our leagues, and how we're gonna coach our kids. And Chop, when you go to a club tournament, making sure that your dugout and your parents are doing things the right way, regardless of what's may or may not be happening in the other dugout. And it's James, I think you're doing a great job of kind of taking the message on the road with the Sandlot, and the more people that see it as, right now it's the alternative. I hate saying that. It shouldn't be the alternative, right? Like our approach, I think, should be the mainstream.
Yeah.
Right. And right now it is the alternative. And the only way that I think we make it less alternative and more of the mainstream is to just live it. And, get either through things like this or the blogs that I write, or the kids that you interact with at camps, and every one of those parents that kind of sees how it can be versus what it is, I think is a win. And then that's when, at the end of the day, the kids get more out of it, whether they end up continuing athletically past that like magic 12-year-old age where 70% of kids quit, they've gotten enough out of their youth sports experience to teach the resiliency and the effort and the bounce back and all that that's going to serve them as young adults and as adults. And, for us as parents, we can just look back, whether it's, whether Maddox plays his last game when he's 12, or, Doug Lowe, seeing you play your last game when you're 22, we look back and be like, man, that was awesome. And it wasn't just like this hair ripping, horrible, anxiety ridden experience. It was like, oh man, I had so much fun getting to go to the field and watch him play and, compete and win some and lose some. And, that's when when we're done as coaches, James and Chop, and as parents, I think that's the win for both our kids and our communities and the kids we've coached. And then for us as parents, we're not going to remember any of the scores of these games. Like, James, what was, do you remember? I can remember 3 games I ever played in, like, in detail. And it was things that my teammates did. It wasn't even like things necessarily that I did, scores or standings. Like, that stuff fades, especially as you get older, not from like lack of memory, but just, you have new memories that matter more. But the experience, the way you met, back to what we were saying about camp, like the way that you felt around sports, right? Like at the end of the camp day, or at the end of the sandlot, or at the end of the season, like, how did being there make me feel? Right. Yeah. And if that's positive, and that takes the whole village, right? That takes the coaches, the parents, the other team's coaches, the other parents to create that environment. Right. And if that environment is there and positive and in all ways, like, then it made me feel good about the experience, made my kid feel good. That's the win. Where if you look back on it and you're like, man, that just wasn't much fun. People were screaming, and the kids after every strikeout were in tears on their way back to the dugout, and you can see the slumped shoulders and all that. You're like, well, something's wrong with the environment if that's how the kids and the parents are behaving and experiencing the situation. And like all things, these things can be taught, right? People are malleable. So
I think kids, they remember how you made them feel. I think parents remember how you made them feel too, more than they listen to what you say. So by the way you model, as you coach, the way you love on those kids, the way you love on those parents, they remember the way you make them feel as a coach. So, Chopper, you had something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's that old adage of, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it as a parent. Like in game, like, don't yell a negative, like, internalize that. If your emotion isn't gratitude or joy, just think before you speak, and then think longer until the game's over. And then when you have something good to say, or an emotion of joy, go ahead and say it. I get to coach my son in baseball, but then I get to be a fan when he's playing flag football and basketball. And it's cool because the same core does all the sports together. And so I just get to be this like blown away, amazed dad, of like, oh, great job to all of them. And if they don't do something right, it's all right, guys. Hey, you're the best. Like, win the next moment. We were in a championship basketball game and we blew a lead and we were down by 1 with 2 minutes left. And I looked at a kid I get to coach in baseball. I'm like, dude, Theo, we just got to win the next 2 minutes. It's light work. We just got to win the next 2 minutes. And they came back and won. They could have came back and lost. So what? At least you give them an opportunity of like, oh yeah, I just got to win the next 2 minutes. It's a 1-point game. So just have something good to say as a parent. And if you don't, that's okay. We're humans with emotion. Just don't say it. Just put your arm around your wife and whisper that you love her, do something different.
I'm totally optimistic in club, Chop, you've got a different perspective from the club world in all sports. But like, I think at least here in our area, like the rec leagues are doing I think a good job of it, of working hard to create the right environment and atmosphere for the kids. And I think what's challenging is when you go to the club space, whatever sport it is, there are no rules, right? There's no charter. Like Little League has a charter and they have bylaws and they have expectations. And people that sign up for Little League or flag football or, rec basketball, they have all sort of made the decision to buy into this. So I think, and that's a result of the effort that the leagues have put in, the rec leagues, to kind of create that culture and put their time and energy into it. I think it gets challenging to kind of, let's say, like, legislate the behavior. Is like any club can pop up with its own ethos, right? And if it's, we're going to be the number 1 ranked team or wherever, that's a different culture and environment, right? And so I'd love to see. I have no solutions for this because the club space is a little outside of my area of expertise. But I'd love to hear some of your guys' thoughts of how do we try to bring a little bit more of a community-based atmosphere to the club world, because I think we all recognize that club sports is here. Like it's too big to go away at this point, right? And so how can we potentially affect positive change there?
Chopper,
And
you're
my
doing that.
optimism,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
my optimism comes from the rec leagues, and we're lucky here. We have tons of myself included. I'm on on the board of our little league, and I think we do a really good job in the little leagues in this area, and the the football league and the basketball league and the soccer league, like work really hard at it. Of course, nothing's perfect, but most of the like horror stories that I hear are from the club space, right?
Yeah.
The club basketball, the fights, the club in the parking lot of the club softball tournament, like the intensity, the win at all costs, like it feels more intense in that space where there kind of are no rules, right? Like you go to a club tournament with 100 basketball teams, there could be 100 different guys with 100 different
Motives.
motivations and
Yeah.
attitudes, and like how do you create a cohesive environment? I don't think it's possible, right? Unless you somehow hit every one of those individual coaches, which are spread out all over the place. Like, and this is something I've sort of wrestled with a lot lately, seeing how well run and good some of the a lot of the rec programs are, and then sort of hearing these stories from the club space and be like, we're not even in the same realm of
Yeah.
attitude and purpose, and like how do we kind of bridge that gap? And as of now, I don't really have. This is something I think about a lot because I know that a lot of kids that I coach in all the sports are doing club in whatever sport there is, and that certainly after kind of the age of 12, when Little League sort of ends, it's sort of an 100% a club space.
Yeah.
Right. There's not a lot of infrastructure for rec programs past the age of 12, kind of nationally. And sort of how, but I don't have a solution for it. But
So
it's
I'll
something I
ask
think
Chopper the
about
$1 million
a
question.
lot.
Chopper, how do you fix the club culture?
Yeah, and it's setting. We have our vibe, right? So it's like Coach Spring said earlier. You got to control the controllables. So we get to control our vibe. So when I come into a tournament, it's a vibe. When we do scrimmages, we say, hey, let's do a barbecue, and let's eat together after, and let's show that club space that it's not all about winning. We played a scrimmage a few weeks ago against a team that's a little bit behind us, and the coach wanted to start yelling and screaming. I'm like, no, dude, we were both standing next to each other because it's a scrimmage. There's no umpires. We were umpiring ourselves. I was like, hey, it's okay. Like, hey, just encourage them. It's you guys just started. You don't try to be what we are. We're a year ahead of you guys. Like, this is what we were last year. It's all about the process. It's all about how you mold each moment. Just encourage them. Like, just tell them you love them. Tell them you care about them. It's okay. I know it's your son. It's okay. And that's all you can do. Is someone told me a long time ago, I think it was a pastor, you can't change the world, but you can change someone's world. So whatever's in our circle of influence, we get to decide how we navigate it. And the hope is when we model it, other folks will be like, wow, the parents aren't upset. They're not uptight. Win, lose, or draw, it doesn't matter. The results do not matter.
There's a ripple effect, man, for sure.
And that's how you do it.
The Sully moment in the dugout with you, Springer.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. This is the final scenario, and then we're out of here. 30 seconds max, but break it down like I'm 5 years old. The overbearing, micromanaging parent. You're the coach. They're overbearing. They're micromanaging. Their kid is failing because of it. How do you approach that parent? Chopper, you first.
It's setting the realistic expectation early. So all my parents know, they know me, they know what kind of coach I am. It's like, let me be the coach, you be the parent. Let me do my job and you do yours. And if they don't honor that, then it's just a one-on-one where it's respectfully like, hey, I love you. I love your son. You've got to let me do this. If not, you might have to find another club, but this is the culture that we've set. And it's just, that's the conversation.
Well done. I don't have a lot of interaction with parents like that just because how I set up my organization. I don't coach club for a reason. I would say that, and this is big picture, and Chop, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that I feel like most people that are entering the club space in any sport, right? So this isn't just like baseball here in, Southern California, but like club sport, the parents have sort of a goal or an expectation that at the minimum is play high school, right? And Chop, you can maybe tell me I'm wrong about that, but I feel like, we're going to put all this time. I don't think a lot of people are worried about getting drafted or the college scholarship. I'm sure that's there, but I think a lot of people that enter that space in any sport anywhere, like, hey, the end game of this is high school, like getting the opportunity to play in high school. Do you find that that's a pretty fair assessment? Before I
No,
say that, no,
no.
okay,
And
cool.
I, no, and I, but I think that's the problem with club sports is they want the ring. They want that 10-year-old ring. They want to be able to walk around at work and say, my son's the national champion of a 10-year-old team. And that's the problem. If they look through the lens of, I want my kid to get to high school, I think it would change the culture completely. But keep
That's
going.
so insane. Yeah. So what I was gonna say is, I do get asked a lot, and here I just want my kid to play high school sports. I just want to be
Yeah.
on the basketball team, and I think that's a noble goal, because I don't think, as we've been saying for the last hour or whatever, I don't think there is a better teacher for anything as a kid outside of the academic space than the youth sports world, right? So like, I want my kids to play high school sports because of the value of high school sports, not because I care about saying my kid plays high school sports, or because I think if they're really good in high school, they might get to play in college. I want that experience for them. And I think a lot of parents want that. And I get the, how do we get there question, right? And my answer to that is usually not the answer they want to hear. I think most parents, when they say that, they want, hey, play on this club or take this many reps, or,
Right.
make sure your exit velo when you're 15 is this, or your spin rate on drive line is that. My answer is make sure your kid wants to still play sports when he's in high school. Right. And that's, the most basic thing. When we're adults, we can make our kids do some things, right? Like, my daughter does not love team sports. She's into gymnastics, something like that. I'm the adult. She's 7. She's playing basketball this year. Right. And whatever struggle that might be, cool. But when when our kids are in high school, if they don't want to go to the tryout because for whatever reason they don't love their sport, they're not going to go. Yep. We drop them off, or they drive themselves to high school. And if it's basketball tryout day or water polo tryout day, and they're like, I don't want to do it, I'm going to skip the try. That's the end of it, right? So this gets back to the fun and the quality experience and the love of the game, which is what I think we all treat as like the roots of any young athlete. Like, if they love their sport, if we do everything we can to nurture their love of sport, and they want to continue to play, when they get to 13, 14, 15 in high school is sort of a little bit closer goal, they're going to have the desire and the motivation internally, hopefully, to push themselves to kind of make the team. Where if we're too heavy on some of the other goals when they're younger, and we don't focus on the love of sport, or worse, suck the love of the sport out of it, then all this time and energy, right? And we talk about our ROI, by the time they get to high school, they don't want to do it anymore, then they're done, right? Or they do try out, but they're just going to go through the motions because they played, 42,000 water polo matches before they were 15. Like, how excited can they be about one more water polo match, right? And just taking the long game with that respect, and like, make sure, especially when they're younger, that they're just having fun and love what they're doing. And then, cool, they're 15, they still love it, they're going to go to the tryout, right? They're going to work a little bit harder to try to make the team. Where if that love has been, and this is what we're seeing with the data, most kids are quitting sports before the age of 12, right? Like 70%. Yeah. And the number one reason they quit is it's not fun anymore. Yep. So if it's not fun, they're not going to do it, right? And so kind of it's really interesting what you said, Chop, about that kind of immediate gratification, right? Like, it's crazy. I want the ring this weekend.
It's crazy.
I want to say that I'm on this ranked team.
It's crazy.
Or this, that, I get that.
It's the root of the problem. It's the root of the evil. And I had a parent who, he was taking his kid, he was playing on my team. He was driving him back and forth. I'm in Tucson, he's in Phoenix. That's an hour and 45 minutes. He was doing that twice a week to get a private pitching lesson and then come back. And he called me. He's like, hey, my son told me he's burned out. What do I do? I'm like, stop doing 95% of what you're doing. You're putting all this time, money, effort, and energy. He's not going to play high school baseball. He's going to quit. You can't make him play high school. That's the problem.
Yeah. Totally. And that burnout, I could talk about, that's a whole nother topic, and I can talk about it forever. And there's a lot of causes for it, but like that, you look at that, just to put a bow on this, it's like, if most kids are quitting sports by the time they're 12, and the number one reason they're doing that is it's not fun anymore, there's our blueprints to keep kids more involved in sports for longer, right? With the goal, the outcome of that being like, they're going to learn all these life skills in an arena, like we said earlier, where it doesn't really matter if they fail or not, right? But when you're 27 and you're having a hard time with your boss and you don't know how to deal with it, and then you learn the hard way by reacting the wrong way and you get fired, that matters, right? When you're 9 and 10, it's a teachable moment. And, as, to wrap it up, like, as I felt more purpose in my coaching, it's to get more kids to stay involved longer so that they get the value out of youth sports that's going to serve them for the rest of their lives. And if we kind of circle back and say what's going to keep them involved longer and get them past that 12-year-old hurdle, well, let's look at let's listen to them. The kids are saying it's not fun anymore. So we've got to do what we can in all areas and look at it through that lens so that they continue to do it. And then hopefully they kind of springboard and take it on their own from there, right? Like, we can't hold their hand to a high school tryout, right? James, how many guys got to college and quit before Thanksgiving our freshman year?
Yep.
Right. Like, and there's a lot of reasons for that separate podcast, Brown baseball, 1999 to 2003.
It happened at San Diego State too. No, it happened at San Diego State too. If you don't have that love, if you don't have that love, then you're going to quit when it gets hard. Yeah,
totally. And if you don't quit, someone who loves it is going to pass you by, and you're going to end up on the bench, and then you're going to quit. Right? There's a lot of different scenarios where if you don't have the drive, which comes from the love, it's not external, right? No. If you're going to succeed at high school or beyond, whatever that means, make the team, be a starter, be a contributor, that's got to come from in here, right? That those aren't external pressures and external motivation. And if we can get to the root of the love of the game and the love of the experience, then our kids have that opportunity to find that in themselves when it does get more competitive. And if they don't, then they've got the tools to be, good adults and good parents and good humans. And
I didn't learn.
That's the win.
I didn't learn a lot of life lessons from lectures from my parents or even church. I learned them on the baseball field and the basketball court. And the life lesson at age 12 was different at age 13 and different at age 14 and different at age 17. So nurture these kids to want to come back next year. And then they're going to learn more and more of these life lessons when it really matters, when they become a husband or a wife or a mother or a father, when there's tough decisions to be made as an adult. I lean on the life lesson I learned in high school basketball every day. So there you go. There's the bow on this conversation. Keep them in, keep them playing longer. Man, Springer, thanks for coming.
Appreciate you.
That was fun. Yeah,
it was.
Keep up the good work.
This is why we do it, man. We have a good discussion. I feel like in this day and age of texting, like this is the only time I have a real conversation. Like we haven't talked on the phone in years.
do people talk on the phone anymore? Is that a thing?
I don't even think so. But this is when I have great conversations. So this is why we do it on a weekly basis. Springer, where does the listener find your blogs? I know you're not a big content guy, but where do they find you, brother?
I am not a content guy. I've got a new website up, springtrainingsports.com, with the year 20 goal of taking the spring training mojo to additional sports outside of baseball. I would love to do this conversation again. My blogs are on there, but I don't, this is my podcast experience and it was amazing. I would love to do another one. We'll circle back. There's a lot more we'd like to talk about, and I'm going to give my wife a plug, who's an incredible coach and mentor, and has some different perspective than I do on some of these things. Similar, I would say almost exact philosophy, but different angles. So if you're ever looking for sort of a female voice on some of this, get her on, because she's come at it from a high school coach perspective, which is a perspective I don't share, and James, you don't share, as sort of an administrator of youth programs in different parts of cities, and then as an athletic director of a school on her own. And I think for you guys trying to get this message to as many people as possible, I think that would
let's get her on. Let's get you on a trimester basis, because it's great. It's a great combo. Thanks, buddy. And let's play some music soon.
Top, good to meet you, Jimmy. We'll play some music soon. Keep up the good work, guys.
All right, man. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Click end. You're out of here. Attaboy.
See ya. See ya. Attaboy.
Bang. Now, Chopper, there was a lot there. There was a lot. I mean, that was the guy that really kind of shaped the way I manage a camp. He's very prepared with the way he runs a camp, and then just that positive reinforcement He came from a bear hug place. That was interesting. I've never heard the why. Like, why did you come from that place of positive reinforcement? Well, he was nurtured in this culture of wake you up, slap you in the face when need be, but do it all under the umbrella of a bear hug. Yeah, what's your takeaways?
I loved it. I love that he had a mentor in his life, Coach Mack, I think, if I'm saying that right.
Johnny
and that
Mack.
was Johnny Mack. And that was me with OD. You know, Coach OD was who I cut my teeth running his camps and working for him. And he still has his camp today. He's a legend. I think they named Tustin Western. It's Tim O'Donohue Field. It's after OD.
Why not?
Just an incredible. Yeah. Why not? He's just the best. And he was hard on us. Discipline was a huge part of it. He didn't cuss at us, but he would raise his voice, but he always made sure we knew that he cared about us and he loved us. An incredible man. So yeah, that's what we can be for kids. That's what we can pass on. That's the whole point. Like, pass that on. Don't be the guy, the reason that a kid stops playing. Don't be that. You don't have to do that. That's within your control as a coach. So that's the message that we're shouting from the mountaintops. And it was shouted to us from OD and Coach Mack and coaches that you had in your influence. I mean, your coach that you brought up last week, your acting coach.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like, what an opportunity for us as mentors that we can be that for the next generation. Take that torch, dude.
Coach with a bear hug. That's the title of this one.
Bang.
Bang. Anything else before we say bye-bye?
I mean, make sure you come see us in Austin. It's a tandem. I mean, that's incredible.
Let's
get
go
there.
We got a lot of kids coming. I'm lining up an indoor facility if need be. You got to have a backup plan.
I love that.
And
Coach Spring got a plan.
Fired up. Have that plan. So it's going to be good to see you in person. Going to be good to run a sandlot with you. You'll take the older kids. I'll take the younger. We'll meet in the middle and we'll do the thing. And we've got Coach Flick Money on standby. If the kids keep rolling in and we need a third coach, I mean, it's going to be a heck of a coaching staff there. So
I can't wait.
Get ready, Austin, Texas. Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting. Patrons, you know who you are. We'll be lining up a Zoom here in the coming weeks. Once again, I think that was just so helpful to get on the horn with all of you that listen to this pod. What are your questions? What are your struggles? How can we make this podcast better? But again, I do it selfishly every week because I love the conversation that we can create together. I love you, brother.
Love you too, buddy. Great job, everyone. Rake
and bang.
Bang.